3495 just outside Peru, 268.
South 3495 Phoenix Tower, runway 26, clear to land.
Clear to land 26, Southwest 3495.
Hello YouTube, welcome back to the Life of a Virtual Airline Pilot. I'm your host, Captain Mac. And as you can see, we have less than 7 hours. This is sort of a roundup. We've got 6.5 hours to go, and we are going to be a first officer. We can start flying some larger, faster, longer range aircraft. But we still got to knock out those last 6.5 hours, and that's what we're going to dive into today. You can see that we are located at KPGA, Page, Arizona. And we don't have any bids right now, so let's go ahead and we're going to use a different method for finding flights this time. And as is often the case with these intros, this is take 2 of this little introduction section here. And what I want to use today is I want to use the random itinerary from current location. We're going to choose 5 flights from our current location. Now, I want to fly the King Air 200 and the King Air 350 beach light aircraft, and let me tell you why. I like that 1900. It's a great little aircraft, but having spoken with some friends of mine that are real world pilots, they are telling me that it does not simulate that aircraft as accurately as I would like it to. And what I mean by that is, as much as possible, when I pay money for an airplane on my flight simulator, I really would like it to simulate the aircraft, you know, as closely as can be done. That being said, our King Air 200 and our King Air 350, again, having spoken with friends who fly them in the real world, they are very accurately modeled, and I think I've mentioned that before. So I want to stick with those, which means we want to fly beach light aircraft for the next few flights. Okay, fantastic. Now we could go down here. We're going to select our random itinerary. It has to go from page. We could select category, but if we select anything above probationary first officer, it's not going to give us any flights. So I just leave it at anything flyable, and it will automatically default to flights that we can fly, which is fantastic. If I go in here under aircraft and I pick BEC, where are you at? There it is, beach light aircraft, it's not going to give me anything, and here's why. In Page, coming out of Page, the only flights coming out of there on our schedules, on Phoenix Virtual Airways schedules, are Beach 1900s. Well, the good news is, having used our aircraft substitution chart in the past, we know that we can fly a beach light aircraft in place of a Beach 1900. So to simplify this and make sure that I can fly the beach light aircraft for all of my flights, I can choose Beach 1900. Now, with that being said, what I want to show you here is if I don't choose that, we're going to do 5 flights. If I just do 5 random flights, our first flight is a Beach 1900, the next 2 are beach light aircrafts, but then the 2 after that are the Metroliner. Now I have a Metroliner, but I'm not competent with that aircraft yet, and I do not want to do flights on here with you guys in an aircraft that I'm not competent in. And that's also part of the reason we're kind of still hopping around Arizona instead of getting over to California and stuff like that. Don't worry, we're gonna start expanding out exponentially as we fly larger, faster, and longer range aircraft. And there is going to come a point where we're going to fly a lot of flights with that Metroliner. And just a real quick glance here, down under activities, you have available missions. Now I'm not going to show this to you today, but just know that these missions are a pretty cool setup. We are going to be doing them pretty soon, and when we do, I will show you that there is a mission in Australia that flies nothing but the Metroliner. It's like 50 flights. So we're going to get plenty of time to see that airplane, but we're not going to do it right now. So since I don't want to fly that Metroliner, I want to make sure that I can fly my beach King Air 200 and 350, and I know I can substitute them for a Beach 1900. I will choose a Beach 1900 as the aircraft, and then I'll pick 5 flights, and now all of my random flights will be in a Beach 1900. You can see all Beach 1900. I'm going to substitute the King Airs because I can, and now I know that I got the aircraft that I want. So Page to Phoenix, Phoenix to Show Low, Show Low back to Phoenix. I know we're hopping back and forth, but listen, we got an awesome scenery down in Phoenix, and I want to put that thing to use. So we're going to pick these 5 flights, and we're going to knock this out, and this should get us you know, pretty close. We're only going to have maybe an hour and a half left when we're done with these 5 flights. So we're going to book itinerary, and it tells us. Now, I always count these because I've had once or twice where for some reason it didn't actually add all the flights. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're good to go. And if we hop back over to our profile page, there they are. All 5 flights right there. So our first one, we're in page. We're going down to Phoenix. Let's take a quick look at it. Great Lakes Airlines, flight 7167A. And again, it was scheduled for the 1900. We're going to fly the King Air, 211 miles. We're not worried about the weather. We're not worried about the routes that they have in here, and we're not worried about the charts, which means we're good to go. So at this point, we can hop on over to our ACARS, and we can grab that next bid and get started. So I'll see you over there in just a minute. Okay, let's get our ACARS set up real quick. First thing we need to do is go ahead and grab that next bid. Click on the button there, brings it up, and we want to make sure that our departure airport is the same as our current location. We've done that. PGA or KPGA page down to Phoenix. We're good to go there. All we need to do is set up our route real quick. I have a hard time with ours apparently. We're not going to use the previous routes. We're going to set it up ourselves. Hop down here, and we're going to go straight out to Grand Canyon VOR, so GCN, and then from there to Drake VOR, DRK, and then on to the Coyote 2 arrival, and hopefully that'll register there in ACARS. We got 211 miles to go, so we're going to be climbing up a little bit. We're heading generally southwest to begin with, so we're going to be at an odd 1,000. So let's take it on up to 22,000 feet. And it didn't have any problem accepting the star, so we're good to go on that. And then once we're all set up in our sim, we'll push start flight and we'll be good to go. So let's hop on over and get this aircraft started. Okay, here we are in Page, Arizona in our absolutely beautiful Milviz King Air 350i. You can see Great Lakes Airlines Beach 1900 taxiing out there. I guess he's going to beat us down to Phoenix, but that's alright. He can do his thing. I caught him as he did his startup a second ago. Both engines fired up in like half a second at the same time. It's kind of funny to watch, but nonetheless, we're ready to rock and roll here. We've got our ACARS all started up. Aircraft's loaded right where we want it to be, so we might as well hop on in and get started here. So we need to go through our before engine start checklist. We'll assume that we've already done a walk around. You know, that's something that we can't really physically do here with the aircraft. I mean, we could skim around it, but we're not going to see anything. So, but we'd normally do a walk around first. We haven't done that. We'll assume that we have, and let's go ahead and jump right into the before engine start procedure. So first things first, as always, elevator trim is supposed to be set at 0, and I'm going to crank it up a little bit anyway. Cabin doors are locked, baggage is loaded, weight and center of gravity is good, brakes are set, all switches are off or where they should be. Landing gear is down, power levers are to idle, and they are indeed. Condition levers are to fuel cutoff, and they are, and the propeller controls need to go full forward. So let's go ahead and move those all the way up. There we go. And next is cabin signs. Need to be on fasten seatbelts and no smoking. Sorry, I was trying to think about something else at the same time. So fasten seatbelts and no smoking. Oop, wrong way. Good to go there. And we jump right down and go into the cabin temp mode, which needs to be off. That's this one here. She is now off, and vent blowers need to be on auto. That's these guys right here. Both the blowers are on auto. Haven't found an electric heat switch on this one. Remember, I'm using the King Air 200 checklist because there is not a checklist for this aircraft yet. Sorry, I left that little bar up there, or I popped it up. Oxygen supply pressure needs to be checked. Move that out of the way. There's our oxygen supply pressure. It has got plenty. Have not found an oxygen supply control handle. You may remember in this aircraft the fuel firewall valves are not the same as they are in the 200. The 200 has the red safety switches here. In this aircraft they're just tied right into the circuit breakers here, so we can't do anything with those, but we can turn on the standby pumps. And then the battery's going to come on, and I have found But after a minute or two, you will actually start to hear those standby pumps. But we're not going to sit around and wait on it the whole time. If we look right up here, there goes our Beech 1900 taking off. With our fuel pumps on, oh, you can hear them spinning up now. That's our fuel pumps. We do not have the fuel pressure lights on up here. Well, I got a chop there for a second, didn't it? So we can turn the standby pumps off now. And look at that, we've got our fuel pressure warning lights are on. It doesn't change if we do anything with the crossfeed, so we're not going to mess with it. Auxiliary transfer switches, override switches need to be on auto. Forgive me, I'm kind of stumbling through this here right now. My mind's kind of in one place while I'm trying to start up this aircraft. That's probably not a good idea, right? There are not any no transfer lights. Yeah, that's probably the best way to say it instead of saying no transfer lights. There are not any no transfer lights to test in this aircraft. Fuel quantity, check main and auxiliary. We have none in the auxiliary. We have 600 pounds per tank in the mains for a total of 1,200, as it should be. DC volt and load meters we're supposed to check, but we don't have a button to check these, so I'm not really sure if there's anything we can do with those. Jumping down here, we got to do the stall warning test, and we also have the landing gear warning test on this one. You actually have to hold it on this one. And they're both plenty annoying, which means they're working. Not sure, we do have the test for the fire extinguishers here, but doesn't do anything. It doesn't change any lights, nothing. So we're just going to leave it right there and not mess with it. We need to test the annunciator lights real quick, and we'll just zoom this out just a little bit so we can see everything. All of these down here and these up here should light up, and they do, so we're good to go on that. Database has been reviewed. It is valid. We are on cycle 1506 in case anybody's wondering, and the rotating beacon switch, which is right here, is on. And you hear stuff bumping around because that's my actual checklist I'm using there. So we can jump right into the engine start procedure at this point. We're going to hop on over here. If you don't remember how the procedure goes, I'll try and talk you through it as we go along, but let's go ahead and get started. So battery's already on. Right engine ignition and start switch is this one right here, and we're looking for 12% on the N1, which it'll get there relatively quick, and once it does, we'll scroll on down here and we'll move the right condition lever to low idle. There it is at 12%. Right condition lever goes to low idle. That fires the engine up, and as soon as it goes past 50%, we want to flip that switch off, and there we go. Love the sound of that aircraft. I'm probably talking a little bit louder right now because I've caught myself a few times in these videos mumbling, and I don't want to mumble. I want you to be able to hear me. Hop back down over here, and we need to go ahead. Actually, I apologize. We need to make sure we take a look at our ITT. This is the ITT right here. It's our temperature, and we also want to check our fuel pressure and our oil pressure and oil temperature, which is these two right here, and they're in the green. These numbers will change colors to alert you if you are outside of the green. Alright, so we're good on that. Right condition lever can go to high idle now. Yeah, buddy. You can hear that sucker spinning up. I love it. It's beautiful. And now the right generator would get reset. It doesn't actually reset on this one, so we just flip it to on, and we're good to go there. And now we can roll right into the left engine start. Now, when you turn on the right generator, it's supposed to charge something. Well, it's supposed to charge the batteries up to 0.50, at least in the King Air 200. Since we don't have a legitimate official checklist for this aircraft, I'm just going to leave it on for the start. We're going to roll right into the left engine, fire it up. Watching our N1 here. Let's hop up for a better view. And as soon as we hit 12%, guess what? We're going to move that condition lever to low idle. There's our 12% right there. We don't really want it to go any higher. We don't want a hot start. Low idle. Watching for 50%. It gets there really quick. Flip that switch off. And same thing. We're monitoring our ITT, which is over here for the left engine. Looking good there. And we're monitoring our oil pressure and oil temperature, which is these two right here. They're looking fantastic. So now the left generator can come on. There it is. And the right engine can go back to low idle. And there we go. Let that engine come down a little bit. and we're looking fantastic. Now, one thing that's not on this list, and I'm going to write it in here because I almost forget it every time. We need to turn on the engine anti-ice for all ground operations. Now listen to the change in the engine RPMs when we do this. Oh yeah. And that's really as it should be, because it closes a, I want to say a valve, but it's not really a valve. It basically closes like a door over there. If you're a real King Air pilot, especially the 350 or the 200, and you know exactly what that's doing, please let me know. I'm interested. Alright, so that's the end of our start checklist. So let's go ahead and roll straight on into the after start and before taxi checklist. First thing we want to do is check our DC voltage and load meters. Well, here's what I know. We've got some volts in our battery, some volts in our TPL. Right and left gen are looking fantastic, and center is good, and there's no external power, and we've got a very light load on our DC meters here. So I think we're good on that. Avionics master switch needs to come on next. This guy here, and sure enough, the avionics start firing up right away. Lights are as required, and that's basically going to be nav lights, recognition lights, beacon's already on, strobes are now on. It's daytime, so we're not going to need floodlights, and we'll try to remember to flip on taxi lights. Actually, this is before taxi too, so let's flip those on. Taxi lights are now on. Cabin temperature and mode is as required, and we'll leave the temperature as is, and we'll leave the blowers on auto, and then we'll just flip the main mode switch to auto here. There we go. Brakes will be checked as we start to taxi out. We're going to want to make sure that our bleeds are on. Good to go there. And that is it for the after start checklist. So we've started our engines. We're good to go. Master caution will be taken care of before takeoff. Everything's pretty much ready to rock and roll. So as always, I'm going to do my last minute checks and make sure I haven't missed anything, and then we are going to hop on back in here. We're going to taxi and take off and rock and roll. So I'll see you guys in just a second. Okay, we're all pushed back and ready to go, so we're going to go ahead and start taxiing out here. We've already taken care of our before taxi checklist. I just want to verify taxi lights are on. So we'll go ahead and start taxiing out here. I won't make you watch the whole thing, but it's always good to watch it get started, I guess. I don't know. I enjoy it. So let's go ahead and get started on our taxi here. And just want to take a look at my throttles here. You can see they're just right above that idle D10. I just want to move them up a little more. We should have a bit of a beta range on this aircraft. It doesn't seem to work real well in the 200. See here, it spins up pretty quick there. So let's pay attention where we're going. Get her on the center line here where she belongs. And we'll just keep a little bit in there. Boy, she spins up quick, doesn't she? We gotta watch that, or we're gonna be all over the place really fast. So you can probably tell I'm not using the Track IR5. You know what? It just wasn't working for me. Not a big fan of it. It's not my thing. I don't really like the Track IR. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and continue to not use it. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish taxiing down here, and once we get at the hold short line for the runway there, we'll go ahead and we'll take care of the before takeoff checklist, and we'll get this bird in the air. So I'll see you in just a second. Okay, here we are at the end of the runway, and if anybody can tell me what's wrong with this picture, kudos for you. Leave it in the comments below. I'm not going to tell you. Couple things I want to do before we actually do our before takeoff checklist, because they're not on the checklist right now, but I don't want to forget them. So we're going to be flying at 22,000 feet, so I want to go ahead and I want to crank this on up to, come on, 22,000. Oops, one too far. Come on. Hey, there we go, 22,000 feet. We're good to go there. We will set our, I hope I remember to set our runway heading before we actually take off. And one thing we didn't do on the last flight with this aircraft that I want to make sure we do this time is we're going to set our reference speeds. So if you click on refs, you can see V2, V-rotate, V1, and you click on the buttons on the side here, and then you scroll this to set them. So V1 is going to be at 94 knots. I'm sorry, 90 knots. Let's crank this up to 90. And it gets there really quick. And then we are going to rotate at 95 knots, and V2 will be at 100 knots. And I'm just guessing on these numbers. I'm guessing. So I'm sorry, I don't have any chart to tell me, and I don't know how to properly calculate it on this aircraft. So V1, V rotate, and V2. So V2 is going to be, what did we say, 100 knots, right? So I'm just guessing. I know we can rotate this aircraft at 95 knots. So that's what we're going to do for now. And if I hit refs again, that's my approach speed and my final my flare speed. I'm not sure what VRF actually stands for. Somebody please tell me down in the comments. You'd think I know, but I never deal with that in a Cessna. So, or at least that term. So for the life of me, I can't remember what it is. So we'll set those when we're getting closer to the airport. Click it again, and there we go. Alright, couple last minute things here. We got everything set that is not on the checklist. This guy doesn't turn on yet, don't know why. So let's go ahead and do our before takeoff checklist at this point. We want to make sure that we arm our auto feather switch. That's this one right here. Propeller feathering manually checked. They are actually, that's feathered right there. Okay, if anybody's wondering. And fuel quantity has been checked. We're at 600 pounds aside, just about. Bleed air valves need to be open. That's these two, and they are. Annunciator lights extinguished or considered. This one's the rudder boost, which is, where you at, rudder boost? There we go. That takes care of that one. And then that little switch right there, that has to do with the propeller condition, not the condition levers, but the prop pitch levers. So when I move those all the way forward, you see that light cuts out there. So now we're going to go on that. Transponder is going to remain as is. The only ice protection we need at the moment is the engine anti-ice for ground operations. Auto ignitions are as required. We're going to leave them on. That's these two right here. GPS position is valid, and the standby attitude indicator, we don't actually have one on this aircraft, as you can see. So everything's good to go. We're ready to do our takeoff. Let's go ahead and taxi on out. I want to make sure I remember to set the runway heading once we pull out here. So let's go ahead and get it out on the runway, get lined up, and then we'll set that runway heading real quick just to make sure we have it. So if we need to, right after takeoff, we can go straight into the heading mode, heading hold mode, so that we can take care of anything, especially if we have any issues. You know, if we had, well, we wouldn't go to autopilot if we had like an engine failure or anything, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Let's just get her lined up here. And there, whoa. That's pretty close right there. So let's go ahead and just make sure that our heading is set. Come on over there. We're at 341. That's pretty close to where we need to be. Technically it's 338, but it's always like 2 degrees off in FSX. In case you didn't know that, FSX headings are always like 2 degrees off from the real world headings. I don't know why that is. So 341 is probably spot on. Looks like everything else is ready to go. Once we take off here, obviously our normal flow will be gear up, flaps up when we can, then the yaw damper will come on, prop sync, we'll set our climb power, all that good stuff. All that stuff's going to be taken care of as soon as we get our takeoff done here. So enough of me jibber jabbering, running my gums here. Let's go ahead and get this bird in the air. And just like the 200 now, we don't want to run these throttles quite all the way to full, because if we do, we're going to run the issue of over-torquing our engines, and we do not want to over-torque the engines. That's pretty bad. Although a friend of mine who's a real-world King Air pilot said it makes it shake pretty good. There's our rotate speed. Get her up in the air. Obviously, we got a little bit of a crosswind going on here. Positive rate of climb. Gear comes up. Keep her going where we want to go here. And we're not quite ready for flaps up yet. Bring that trim down just a little bit. Get the speed up for us. At this point, while we're waiting for flaps to come up, yaw damper can come on. That's this guy right here. There's the yaw damper. And we're going to hand fly it for a little bit here. We'll do the autopilot in a few minutes. We're not ready to set climb power quite yet. What we do need to do here is start making a left turn to get around onto our course here. So we'll go ahead and do that. We're high enough, our speed's high enough that we can go ahead and bring flaps up. That's going to bring the nose down, We're going to gain a little more speed. And I know our flight director is telling us to go the other way. That's just because we have the heading set right now. But we're in roll and pitch mode, as you can see on top here. We're good to go. Speed's coming up pretty nice. Let's go ahead and set that climb power now. We're going to roll the RPMs back on those prop pitch. Bring it down. We don't have a chart to use on this, so I'm just taking a guess here. I like that right there. We're good to go. Auto feather needs to come off at this point. Let's go ahead and take care of that real quick. I gotta right click it. Auto feather is now off, and we're just about on the course we want. Nice view of the Grand Canyon down there. Remember, we need to fly the airplane. That's the first thing you need to do, is fly the airplane. Everything else is monitoring at this point anyway. Let's go ahead and roll it out here, and let's get that autopilot going. Don't let her climb too fast on you. We're going to want altitude hold for the moment. Autopilot needs to come on. It's in roll mode right now. Change the nav. Let's see. I had an issue with this last time, so let's go to heading mode. Oh. You guys remember I had a problem with this last time. I think it has to do with the way it intercepts the course there. Not 100% certain, but yeah. I had a little bit of issue with it last time, and yeah, I don't know what else to tell you except we need to get this thing climbing for the moment. So we're going to use vertical speed to climb, and we'll try and re-engage the nav mode here in a minute. We're going plenty fast. So let's bring that climb up to 2,000 feet per minute. It's a strong aircraft, a lot of power in those engines, and let's change this so we have the view we want here. Same thing, we can bring that down a little bit. Whoops. Oh, this is the one I'm looking for, the range here. Bring the range down a little bit. You can see we're set to nav on the FMS. So when I hit the nav button, what I want it to do is I want to see FMS up here. So that's what I'm trying to get going. VOR1 is not what we want. Roll is not what we want. So we're going to have to stick with heading mode, I guess, until we get on course here. Not sure why that is. Might be a little glitch in the system. I'm still messing around with it, trying to get it figured out. Bear with me on that. We're passing 10,000 feet, so landing lights and taxi lights can come off at this point, and that will complete. Well, we do have cabin signs and aft blowers. All of that's taken care of. So our after takeoff checklist is done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take this thing up to cruise altitude and try and figure out how to get it to nav properly. Bear with me, and I will see you guys when we get up to cruise. We'll take care of that cruise checklist. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Hey, we're not at cruise altitude yet, but I wanted to hop back on here real quick because I did figure out how to let me set this real quick. Come on, get down there. Okay, I figured out how to get it to fly the FMS properly. It's actually this switch right here. I had it set to FMS, but if I do that, watch, this will turn blue up here. See? I need this to be magenta, so when I click it and it's magenta and then I click nav, it goes to FMS right here. That's what I need it to be on. So to make sure that we're flying the FMS flight plan, we need to click this preset until FMS turns magenta up here, and then it's going to follow that flight plan. So I just wanted to hop on here real quick and show that to you guys so that hopefully we'll remember that in the future and we won't have issues with it. Look at that engine, that thing's awesome. I think one of the things that probably needs a little work on this aircraft still is you can see the animation of the prop. It looks a little awkward to me. It's not so much that you can see the prop in there. That's not necessarily unrealistic. It's this this cone around it that's supposed to be the prop at speed looks a little odd to me. So you know, hopefully they'll fix that animation. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and continue on up to cruise altitude, and I'll see you guys here in a couple minutes. Okay, here we are at cruise altitude. Need to take care of our cruise checklist really quick. And the first item, as always, is to set the cruise power according to the cruise power tables. Now, we don't have cruise power tables for this King Air 350. So basically, we just got to kind of figure it out on our own. And right now, you can see that my cruises, or my prop, wow, I really can't talk today. My props are set at about 1,560 RPMs each, and I actually missed this, the prop sync, was supposed to be set on the takeoff checklist, and I don't know how I overlooked that. I think I just got myself in a bit of a hurry. So, and that's why we use checklists, so we don't overlook those things. So, my mistake. If you caught that, good on you. I want to keep us around 210 knots. We'll probably get a little faster than that, but I'm going to leave the props where they're at now at 1547. I'm going to leave the power where it's at right now, and I think we're good to go on that. If it gets a little too high, I'll bring the props back just a hair more. Engine instruments need to be monitored, and we will monitor our fuel gauges. You may remember, just like the King Air 200, we would typically monitor for a long flight. We would monitor the auxiliary fuel gauges to make sure that the fuel is flowing evenly out of the tanks until they're empty, and then roll over to the primary. But of course, we don't have any fuel in our auxiliaries, so if we just look at our primary tanks, we're going to want to make sure that our fuel flows evenly out of these tanks, and of course that we have enough to make it to where we're going. Other than that, there's nothing else to do during cruise except keeping an eye on these instruments here and making sure we're going where we're supposed to go. So we'll leave it at that now. I'm going to go ahead and continue with the cruise, and when we get close to top of descent, we'll hop back on here and take care of our descent checklist. So I will see you again in a little bit.
3495 just outside Peru.
South 3495 to East Tower,